And from the beginning, I kind of wanted to go into medical school from high school all the way up until probably my last year. Things didn't go to plan. I applied to grad school. I'm in grad school now, and I sort of had the summer off to figure out what I wanted to do, and I decided to look into genetics and see what I could do with that. So I started a company called My Exome. You guys all know things like 23andMe and Ancestry to give you information about your heritage and as well some health information, but none of them really give you information about something you can act on. So yeah, it's cool to know your ancestry. It's cool to know whether you're from Africa, but you can't really do much with that. So I started looking into what you can do with that. So a little bit of a backstory. I started U of T in 2015. I graduated from high school, pretty good student. I had an 88%, 89% average. I applied to Western, McMaster, and U of T for life science. Didn't get into Western, didn't get into McMaster, but got into U of T. I say that was my first choice. It was my first choice. So I got into the life science program. I started in 2015, and I decided to do a double major in physio and nutrition. And all 4 years I commuted from Richmond Hill. It was awful. An hour 30, 40-minute bus ride, and there was a subway on a good day. When there was actually traffic, it took 2 hours and more. So then, when I came into first year, again, like I said, I thought I was a pretty good student. I had an 88% average. I was like, wow, I'm ready to take this university by storm. First midterm, Bio 120, Dr. Barrett, does he still teach? Walter Heisen, no? First midterm, 64. So that was pretty brutal. That was a big hit to the ego. Kid coming out of high school, thinking it was amazing, and first test 64. And that was pretty devastating because you hear from my parents, from people who are in med school, people who are in university, that one bad mark can kill your GPA, and then good luck getting into med school. At the time, that's what I thought, but I found out later on that some of the med schools like Queen's, U of T, and Ottawa, they actually dropped some of their lowest marks. But I didn't know that at the time, so I got really stressed out. So there you go. Okay. So yeah, then over the next few years, I was bringing up my GPA. One thing that I realized was, even though my GPA was going up, I would look around at people in my program, and they had NSERC grants, they'd have research positions with sick kids, they'd be volunteering, they'd be doing mission trips, they'd be doing all these things. And I'm sitting here, I'm trying to get my GPA up. I work at Gap. I work at Gap. And I'm thinking, how am I going to compete with these guys? So again, over the next 4 years, I started to bring up my GPA. I managed to bring it up to about a 3.8, which, by the way, really hard. One thing, if you're trying to bring up your GPA, I guess you guys are on 4th year and 3rd year now, is if you get bad marks in your first year, it's a huge blow to your GPA. So I wish I knew that back then. So then I started doing, I got some positions. I got sick kids research position. I got one at York. I did those over the summer. I got some good volunteering experience through family friends. I got some good work experience. And I said, okay, let's gather up an application. I got some references from one of my profs. I got a reference letter from my PI, and I got a reference letter from the volunteer coordinator, which were all pretty good, because I wrote 2 of them, because they just said, write 2 and we'll work and we'll fix it together. And then I applied. I applied in 2018. I wrote my MCAT in 2017. Very good, except for cars. I got 126 in cars, I think, and that basically pushes you out of McMaster and Western. So then I got my first rejection. I think it was in January from Queen's, then Ottawa, and then McMaster, and then finally U of T decided to wait all the way until March for some reason, and they sent me one while I was in class, and I got rejected. And then I was sort of thinking, what now? People around me have either gotten interviews, they've either have work positions, or they got into grad school already, and I haven't applied to grad school. I don't have anything waiting, so now I have a whole year waiting. So if I want to reapply again, I'd apply in August, hear back in January, and if I got in, I'd have to start in September. So that's a whole year. Now what? I started applying to jobs, went to Indeed. I sent around 70 applications, which in hindsight is absolutely nothing because you have to send a lot more to get anything. But I was upset because I wouldn't hear back. I got one interview for a volunteer medical office receptionist. And I dressed all nice. I drove to the neurology center of Toronto. I drove down there. I had a nice interview. She was great. She was showing me around the office and she showed me the coffee. She's like, "Oh, this is where you can get your coffee and everything." So I thought, I got it. Okay? And then I get an email the next week saying, "Oh, sorry, there's lots of competition, and we decided to go with someone else." And I'm there going, "I just got rejected from a volunteer position." I have a degree from U of T. I got great marks. I'm pre-med. I have all these things, and I can't even work for free. So what now? So then I spent a few days bumming around in my house. I was watching YouTube videos, I'd go to the gym, trying to figure out what exactly to do. So I always liked the idea of genetics. I took a course in 4th year called HMB422 It was an online genetics course. It was really heavy, it was really dry, but it was really cool, and I did well in it because I really liked it. I also liked money, which everyone likes. And one thing I realized is whenever I worked as an employee at Gap or restaurants, I really didn't like being told to do that much. Like, for example, that she'd tell me whether I can or can't go to the bathroom or when I can have lunch. So I thought, well, I have a free summer now until I get into grad school. Because I did apply to grad school and got in after I got rejected. So I have a whole summer now. What can I do? So there's, like James said, startups, they're huge. You hear about them all the time. And it's very intriguing. So I decided, let's look into that and let's try to find something to do genetics. So I spent the first 2 months or so, I was basically every day, same routine. I would wake up around 6 o'clock, I'd go do cardio at the gym, I'd come home, I'd eat something, then I'd go to Starbucks, I'd open PubMed and OMID, and I'd look at articles that had to do with genetics. And essentially, if you guys don't know, I'm sure you guys all know, 99% of us are genetically basically the same, and that 1% is the single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs, that account for differences in hair color, height, caffeine sensitivity, response to drugs, even cancer. So I looked into that. I gathered a big gene list. It's probably thousands of articles. I gathered a big gene list, and I decided, okay, let's see if I can do something like one of those genetic testing companies, direct-to-consumer companies. So I started looking for labs that wanted to partner with me, and I ended up finding one in the United States. And overall, I had to spend a lot of money between incorporation, partnering with the lab, getting software developed and all that. And I ended up tapping into some OSAP grants, which I don't really advocate for, but I did what I had to do. I tapped into my savings, all that, and I tried to start it. And I started, and it was overwhelming, and it still is. I don't think there is one thing that actually went to plan. I didn't know anything about it. You know, one thing when you come out of high school and you go into university in the pre-med route, and you go into grad school, is that you're kind of in a bubble where everything's sort of handed to you, right? All you have to do is do the work. So didn't have any guidance. My parents, even though they have their own businesses, they're not really in this business. They don't know much about e-commerce. My brother did, so he helped me out a little bit. So I use a lot of Reddit. I use a lot of forums. I read a lot of articles, blogs. I spoke to people. And again, I think James probably understands this, is that there's so much information out there and there's so many things that can go wrong that it's very easy to overthink, and then you do nothing. So between thinking about, intellectual property, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this, you sit there and you're paralyzed, like, you know what, I don't even want to do any of it. So my brother is like, get started, do something. So just do something. So this is what I thought it would be like. That's what it's actually like. Like I said, I can't say there's one thing that went to plan. Even little things like opening up a business account, RBC made around 7 mistakes that pushed me back about a month. And the lab and the software, which was absolutely brutal. There were so many bugs. And we had to figure that out. At the same time, there were customers that were complaining, like, yo, where are my results? I sent this in, why can't I order, all these problems. Things eventually started falling into place a little bit. It's still brutal. And we started getting some attention. We got published in the Toronto Star, and we're growing. But I still do, and you still have to wear many hats. So between things like managing the money, and then at the same time you have to learn how to market, which I'm still learning. You have to put your own. It's a lot of risk. For example, like between digital marketing, you have to sort of throw your money in there and target the way you think works, and then experiment. But that's what happened. So actually, there was a slide here that I left out. There was about 6 things that I wanted to say. Sort of the key takeaways is one, there's this just get to work. There's a lot of people out there that say if you like what you do, you won't work a day in your life. I don't believe that. I think work is work. It's just that when it's something you like, the end result is much more gratifying, and especially if it's something for you. Number 2 is don't always listen to statistics, and don't always listen to what people tell you, because I think the statistic, I believe it said somewhere like over 90% of startups fail. We're still in the startup phase. We're still trying to gain traction and grow. But if you listen to those statistics and you listen to all that information, you sort of get paralyzed and you don't really know what to do. And the easiest thing to do is to do nothing. So just start doing something. Number 3, is probably the most important one that I think, is that take care of your health. Because over the 4 months that I started doing this, I was always really into nutrition and fitness. I would actually use MyFitnessPal. I would track my macros, I would weigh my food, all that. And my diet basically became coffee and desserts. That's something I really like. So like I told you, I'd wake up, I'd go to cardio, I'd go home, drink some coffee, eat something quick, go to Starbucks, work there, go home, then I'd eat something quick energy, because I wanted to go work out actually, because in the morning it was just cardio, and I didn't want to eat anything too heavy, so I would eat something sweet, sugary, and then I'd come home and I didn't want to eat at night, like because it would be late. So and I realized that was ruining my productivity. It was making me less efficient. And also, I wouldn't make any time to see anyone. So, for example, like I told you, I would spend the whole days working on it. People would invite me out. I'd say, no, I have to work on this. I wouldn't really see family much. And I still don't, because I'm constantly working on it. I wouldn't see family much, and that's not very good, because even though you think that funneling all your time into this might be a good thing, it can actually make you less efficient, less productive, and less successful, because you don't get any time to rest. And you really start to burn out with stress and lack of sleep and bad nutrition. You really start to burn out, and that's really not good. And finally, don't think that you never know what's going to happen. So I wanted to go into medicine. I could eventually go into it, I don't know. But just because you don't get in the first time, or you think you want to do something and it doesn't work out, doesn't mean you can't find something else. You never know. If you actually have something you like to do, a hobby, you can figure out a way to turn it into a side hustle. And then from that side hustle, if eventually it becomes good enough, that could become your career. Like I said, we're still in the early stages. We work primarily through e-commerce. So what happens is people order the kit, it gets sent to them, they do the test, it's a little swab test, instructions and everything. They send it back, the lab processes it, and then through the software, the job of the software is to pull those results from the cloud, and then translate them, and then show them to people on their own secure web portal, sort of like how you have a portal on Workis. That's what I'm doing. We're still in the early stages. We're still growing, and hopefully we can get better. So now, if you guys have any questions about anything about the science or about what it actually is, or if you have any questions in general, please go ahead.
What does your team look like right now?
It's me and a software engineer. So that's one thing that we really want to do. One thing we want to raise some money so that we can bring in people. I don't want to have one software engineer because there have been cases where you have family things and whatnot, and that kind of pushed things back a week or a few days. I want to get a team developed at least 2, because you also have to constantly fix bugs and you have to update how it looks. And then I also want people for marketing, because this is a direct consumer product, so one of the big things is you have to market. And to me, myself, I don't have much experience in it, so it's sort of like a trial and error. Sometimes you lose money, sometimes you make money. So having a team where you can actually work with them, and they're absolutely dedicated to that, can probably help with that. But right now it's just me and a software engineer. I asked James during the break, or actually during his presentation, how he feels his team helps him, and I can definitely attest to that. There have been some pretty bad lows where it's like you have no one to talk to, and you sit there thinking like, oh, I'm just gonna give this thing up because I don't know what to do here. But having a team could be a good thing. You could really sort of bounce off each other. One thing that happened is that, another thing I wanted to say, and that relates to that, is that if you're looking to start something, it's better to do it yourself than to just find a partner because it's convenient. So either you're going to find a team because it's a good team, you guys each have different strengths and you can make the business good, or do it yourself and figure it out from there. Problem was with me, I was so excited at the beginning. I was talking to a friend, and I'm like, oh, you want to come on board? And he came on board, and he did nothing. You know, I was doing 99. I was putting in the money. I was putting in the time. I was designing the website. I was getting the logistics done. I was doing science, and he was doing his pharmacy school exams. And I understand that, but you decided to come on board, and you do nothing. So then we got into a fight about that, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to do it myself. And so looking back, I kind of wish I had a partner that had different strengths, particularly in the software side, or I just stuck at it early.
So I know you already touched on this, but I was just wondering, as a customer, like when you send in like your swab and then you get your results, like what kind of results you get, and like what you can actually.
Oh yeah, I didn't actually go into that.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay. So the test itself is done for 5 topics. It's done for nutrition. It's done for fitness. It's done for sleep. It's done for stress, and it's done for cannabis. So for things like fitness, it will tell you, for example, your muscle fiber breakdown through some genes. So it tells you if you're more suited for power exercise, things like sprinting, or you're better suited for endurance exercise. It tells you your injury risk based on your bone mineral density and your collagen. That's all based on genetics. It tells you the nutrition side, tells you your vitamin status, your minerals, how you respond to caffeine, lactose, alcohol, how your sensitivity to saturated fats and carbohydrates as well. And then the sleep side tells you there are some genes that have been shown to be important in determining how much sleep you need, as well as how much you actually tend to, this one is interesting, is how much you tend to move around when you sleep is really impacted by some genes. So we test those. Cannabis, how fast you break down CBD and THC, which sort of determines, for example, THC, the high effect that you get, it's broken down faster. You get less of that feeling, much like caffeine, you break it down faster, you're less likely to feel the energizing effects of caffeine. And so we compiled a gene list of about 57 genes, and like I said, we went through all those articles. I spent I don't know how many hours, and there's a big gene list that we have in our back end for each of the genes, and we're constantly moving forward. So they get those results, and it'll tell them things, for example, like, oh, you're genetically predisposed to lower vitamin A levels, try to get this much vitamin A in your diet, or consider a supplement.
So you kind of said that you had like a gene list of like future, like are you gonna try and like keep adding more topics?
Yeah, so right now, like I said, we have a gene list of about 57, but you never know, things, science could actually show that, oh, this gene actually is not involved in this, and actually this gene is. So that's one of the responsibilities, and that's why I want to have people that have a science background to work with us, sort of keep updating. You have to keep looking at the literature, and you have to keep removing the ones that actually weren't involved, and the ones that were, and the job of software engineers to sort of figure that out, how to show the results to people.
Are you based anywhere, like an office somewhere, or is it just like James?
Yep. Just like, yeah, just that. It's all remote for now. I I would definitely, the goal is to get an office to work out of. It's much better. That's why I used to go to Starbucks, is because it's much nicer to actually work somewhere than it is to work at your house. The goal is probably somewhere in Toronto to have a place within the next few months.
Okay, so like a year from now, where would you want to be?
Ideally or practical or realistically?
Oh.
Ideally, big company. Realistically, still have a long way to go. So, like I said, that little slide I showed you, by the way, I thought it was going to be, is that actually things take a long time. And when you see stories about startups that are making millions, they raised $68 million in this round, you actually don't see any of the back end. You don't see the high highs and the low lows. So practically, I would like to be at least well established and have a steady stream of customers. Right now, we have a good stream, but we want it to be to the point where it's continuous. It's continuous. But the main thing I want is to grow the team. That's the main thing, because as you grow the team and you bring people that are experienced, you grow the business. And yeah, that's one thing I didn't want to do in the beginning. I wanted to do everything by myself, and then you realize that, okay, owning 100% of your company isn't that great, because you have to do everything, and no one that you bring along is incentivized to do anything. So I want to grow the team, which will grow the business.
Did you say you were in grad school right now?
Yeah, so I'm at Sunnybrook. I'm in Dr. Benjamin Goldstein's lab. I'm doing some research on genetics and bipolar disorder. So it's basically seeing looped out polymorphisms. I'm looking at changes in brain structure. So I'm doing that. So the routine right now is, again, it's pretty hard because they expect you to be there 9 hours a day. So I get there at 8 a.m. I leave at 6 p.m. And then during my lunch breaks and everything, I'm working on this. I'm working on this in the morning, and I'm working on this when I get home and on the weekends. James said he dropped out of grad school.
I'm still there.
Who knows? Who knows? Eventually, if this gets to a point where it's good and it's worth it to keep pursuing, and I was full time, but if it comes to a point where it's absolutely eating all my time, I am completely open to going into it. Any other questions?
So other genetic companies available like 23andMe, they also have information on nutrition and just giving advice in general, and also on inheritance. So how does your startup is distinguished from the others? Is it more fitness related?
Yeah, so they provide some information about things like lactose, your caffeine sensitivity, but they also focus largely on ancestry and health. One thing that is distinguishing us is that we're completely focused on fitness and health, and what we plan to do is eventually, once we get a strong user base going, we want to get some sort of personalized supplements going based on genetics, and as well as start getting some trainers involved, some dietitians that can start to actually work with people that get the results to achieve certain goals.
So both of you had mentioned that you use some of your own money to kind of get things going. So what if you have like no money? Like you're an undergraduate student, you have like nothing, but you have like a lot of good ideas, you have like everything else that both of you have mentioned, like you have a lot of ideas, you have some passion, you might even have like a good team, like your crew from HMB422. You came up with this great idea. So is it like completely hopeless that you can't get started?
There are some startup incubators and accelerators that we've actually applied to as well. And a lot of startups, well actually, I would say probably 90% of the startups that are known, they raise money from investors as well. Problem is with an idea, it's not very tangible. A lot of them like to see a little bit of traction. But if it's a great idea, an absolutely great idea, it is likely that you can find someone to help you fund that. They take a portion of the company, that's just what they do. Unless you get things like business bank, you get bank loans or loans from the government of Canada, those are also available as well. There's, like James said, the startup community and the business community, Canada does like to promote small businesses, and a lot of these incubators, like there's a few at U of T, there's the Mars Discovery District, there's U of T Hatchery, there's a believe he was telling me about one that
You
test? I didn't know
down
about
here,
it.
downtown.
There's some in California, there's Techstars, there's Y Combinator, they're huge. There's plenty that you can apply to with just ideas, and they can help fund you and help you grow that idea. A lot of them, again, like to see traction, but there are some that work strictly off ideas, if it's a great idea.
Yeah, just to chime in, like UTest is the one at St. George campus. They're like right across the street from ours. They actually have like a mentorship program. So if you have an idea that you can come in and they'll kind of give you information about the business and like how to deal with like, you know, distributing equities and like raising seed rounds. So there is a lot of good help out there. You just have to look for it.
But you obviously shouldn't be afraid to invest some of your own money unless you absolutely have none. I tapped into some of the OSAP grants. Maybe I shouldn't have done that, but that's what I did. I worked a little bit in the summers. I saved up some money from that. I had a few sales jobs, and I invested some of that. And honestly, when you invest some of your own money, it's a little different because you feel a little bit more attached to it, and then you care a little bit more. One of the problems is that a lot of investors may not necessarily like to give you money because it's not your money, right? It's their money. You can just play around with their money, and they don't want you to do that. So investing a little bit of your money might be a good thing, but there are definitely options out there if you can.
I guess this is a question for both of you guys. Have you guys considered like going to school for an MBA? Like eventually maybe?
Probably not for me. Number one, I think the cost is crazy. I think it's. I heard from. Is it 100K for an MBA? Yeah, and you need some work experience to get into an MBA in a related field, which I don't really have. I guess maybe this can count. But in terms of how it can benefit me, maybe I haven't looked into it, but I don't see it as a good use of my time, rather than just maybe investing more time in this.
So Phil, have you heard of the Biotech program?
No.
So this is a program run out of UTM. It kind of combines business with like a biology background, so you get the best of both worlds. It is a 2-year program, and it's very small, so it's about 60 students, but some undergrad students actually consider that as a route potentially to getting into like entrepreneurship and other things.
Do any of you guys know how to code? Or yeah? If you can do something with that, you can get into AI, deep learning, software development, biotech. That is absolutely blowing up. Especially business-to-business software companies. So for example, helping businesses, things like managing inventory, stuff like that. I'm sure there's software that exists for that. But software companies, and if you find a way to combine AI with biotech, you never know. But that's one thing I wish I learned how to do, is coding. Because then maybe I wouldn't have to hire a software engineer and I could bring someone on board that could work with me. But that's probably one thing I would learn how to do if I could go back.
Okay, so let's thank our guest speakers. Thank you.